Well, happy Sabbath, Shabbat Shalom, and welcome to the Bible study for this 19th day of the fourth month on God's holy sacred calendar. On that pagan Roman calendar, it is, as you can see on the left side, parallel to the 19th. It's the 7th day of July, 2023. Now, as I often mention, the Sabbath on God's calendar is just one date. The day begins at sunset on God's calendar, and that becomes the 19th. If it's sunset where you are today, that has been Friday up until sunset, or actually, technically, I should say it's been the 6th day of the week up until sunset. And at sunset, it becomes the 7th day of the week, the Holy Sabbath, the Holy Weekly Sabbath. And that being, again, the 19th day of the fourth month on God's calendar, the calendar of the future that we should begin to become familiar with. Because once Jesus Christ returns, brethren, if we already understand the calendar, Christ won't have to teach it to us. He can congratulate us for knowing it. And when he references a date, as he will be doing from the Hebrew calendar, God's sacred calendar, he won't be receiving a bunch of confused looks on their faces. How do we transpose this from where's the Roman calendar? When Jesus Christ returns, it will be no more. When Jesus Christ returns as a rock, smashing the toes of those 2 feet, of those 2 legs of the East and West Roman Empire that are represented by the legs and the statue of chapter 2 of Daniel, by that whole great image that King Nebuchadnezzar saw in his dream, that God, through Daniel, interpreted the dream of Nebuchadnezzar to be that the head of gold was King Nebuchadnezzar, the first world-ruling empire, followed by a little bit inferior world-ruling empire, that the silver, the arms and shoulders and neck area of the statue represented the second world-ruling empire, and the Persian Empire. And then the third empire, represented by the lower part of the body, the belly and thighs of brass, representing the third world ruling empire, the Greco-Macedonian Empire, that had 4 Greek generals that followed Alexander the Great. And then the Roman Empire coming in on the scene as the fourth world ruling empire, but it becoming divided into the East and Western divisions, that when we come down to the modern era of today, the feet with the toes of clay and iron, which don't mix, by the way, just miry clay, the common dirt of the street, trying to mix with iron. And that represents these modern days coming up, where 10 nations represented by those 10 toes, which will be current, I shouldn't say nations, I should say kings, because they may be rulers over more than just a nation. They may be some combined regional areas. We don't know how God's going to work that out just yet, but we know that 10 kings concurrently existing will give their power to the last beast, the 7th king of Revelation 17, verse 10, who, according to verse 8, will ascend suddenly, boom, overnight, out of the abyss, out of the bottomless pit. And in duality, that's happened once before, between 1936 and 1945, with the restoration of the 6th of the Holy Roman Empire through the 6th king, the one is of Revelation 17, verse 10. And the other is yet to come, number 7. That's what we're watching for. And when he comes, he must continue a short space, as Revelation 17, verse 10 says, That short space will be 3.5 years, the same length of time as the two witnesses will be doing their job around the world. The same time, those who are accounted worthy to escape will be in a place of nourishment in a wilderness east of the Jordan River for 3.5 years, for 1,260 days, for a time and times and half a time, 3 times and a half. That's in prophecy, 3.5 years. And other things will be happening during that same 1,260 days or 3.5 years. That will be the time of the Laodicean era, the seventh era of God's church, which as an era begins or commences when that 1,260-day period begins, when the fifth seal Great Tribulation begins. And for 75 years, since 75 days before that 1,260-year period, there will have begun a famine of the Word of God. But of course, those two witnesses will be doing the job of replacing that famine of the Word with their witness. So there's a lot about to happen. And that's just ahead of us in prophecy. The next major event in prophecy will be the beginning of the beginning of the fifth seal, the commencement of the Great Tribulation. Now, we can't mark a date here on our calendar for that. No man knows the day or the hour that Christ is going to return, and therefore no man knows the day or the hour when the Great Tribulation will begin, because once that begins, if you could know the exact day it begins, why, you could count down to Christ's return. But at that point in time, it's not going to matter if you could figure it out, because you will have either been accounted worthy to escape and will be in a place of nourishment, protection, safety, final training, or otherwise you will be subject to that beast who becomes the seventh king, who ascends out of the abyss, who establishes and revives the old Holy Roman Empire. And a representative of the Vatican, a pope, will hold the coronation ceremony for that new emperor of a revived Holy Roman Empire. You know, ruling over an empire is an emperor, an empirer, an emperor. And so we will see a world-ruling dictator emperor once again with the power and might of the beast of the Holy Roman Empire restored. That's coming. That's as sure as day is day and night is night. And that's the next major event in prophecy. Just prior to that major event, at the 1290 will be the time for those who are accounted worthy to escape to be taking a flight via the Revelation 12, verse 14, 2 wings of a great eagle. All right, what an introduction to just giving you the date for tonight's Bible study. On the left side of your screen, you can see that it takes 2 dates to equal the 1 date of the Sabbath on God's calendar, which again is the 19th day of the 4th month. It's called Tammuz, Tammuz, by many Jewish calendars. But tonight's the 7th day of July, 2023. Until midnight, man changes the day in the middle of the night. And then it becomes the 8th of July. So both those dates are the 1 date of the 19th of the 4th month, God's weekly Sabbath. And now and I want to say thanks again for the highlighting of this calendar the way it's been highlighted with the 2 days of July 7 and July 8. Mr. Joe did that for us. And instead of highlighting the entire day of July 7 and the entire date of July 8, he took just the 24-hour period and put a little bit of yellow at the end of July 7 and more of that yellow on the beginning of July 8. And that's the way it works. The Sabbath is a 24-hour period, and though on the Roman calendar it has to cover 2 dates, July 7 and July 8, Mr. Joe's got just a little bit of yellow covering the evening portion of July 7 and a greater portion of the yellow covering the daylight part of July 8th, up until sunset, July 8th. All right, I know it can be awkward, but that, God didn't do that. Man did that. Man created this Roman calendar that most of the world has adopted and accepted and adopted. And they had to do that. The governments of each country around the world had to decide whether they were going to adopt the Roman calendar or not. A calendar created by the Roman government and modified by the Roman Catholic Church and the Vatican. Pope Gregory doing most of that modification, taking 10 days out of the calendar to make it kind of resync back up with the sun and the solar system, which they base the calendar on, more than the lunar solar system that God bases it on. So man did the best he could, but he messed it up. He had to take 10 dates out of the calendar. They didn't change the weekly cycle as they did that. They just eliminated 10 dates out of a certain month in a certain year, about 1,000 years ago, roughly. So man's calendar, it's man's calendar. It's a mess. And I don't know about you, but I'm sure going to be glad to see that gone. Having to transpose back and forth between it and God's calendar when we read God's word that references days from God's sacred calendar, the Hebrew calendar. It's just a complexity that we won't have to do in the future, thank God. All right, what's that orange stuff? Now, Mr. Joe didn't put that orange coloring on the chart. That's something yours truly did after observing the fast day of this month of Tammuz on the 17th of the fourth month. That was just 2 days ago, this past Thursday. As I told you I had planned to do, I did it. I stuck it out. It was a tough day for me, but with the Jewish people who were fasting on that day, I fasted. I had told you before, there's a lot you can learn about it, but the primary thing of the day of the fourth month of Tammuz, let me rephrase that, of the 17th day of the fourth month, the 17th day of Tammuz, the Jewish people call it the fast of Tammuz. And it pictures and represents the destruction of the temple, both the first temple and the second temple. That's the primary thing. And it begins a 3-week period that ends with a fast on the 9th day of the month of Av, or in other words, the 9th day of the 5th month. That's an entire 3-week period. And brethren, like Mr. Armstrong did when he was teaching us about the 1335, a few weeks before he gave us the answer, he instructed all of us to be studying what is the meaning of the 1335. And a few weeks later, with most of us not coming forth with what does this 1335 mean, Mr. Armstrong sat there and announced it. He said, brethren, the 1335 is the famine of the word, the beginning of the famine of the Word of God. And he explained briefly what that famine would indicate and mean. So I'm going to ask you tonight, and we'll talk about it, God willing, in the morning during the Bible study. What do these 3 weeks that began 2 days ago with the fast of Tammuz, the fast of the fourth month, and that ends, the 3 weeks that ends with the fast of Av, on the 9th day of the 5th month, what do these 3 weeks mean or picture? All right, you think about that. Google it if you can. Bing it or Yahoo it or however you do an internet search and see what you can come up with between now and the morning. If you want to know ahead of time. Otherwise, just plan to tune in with us for the Bible study in the morning and sometime during not the Bible study, the Sabbath service in the morning for the United States, or in the afternoon in the United Kingdom. We start that at 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time in the United States, which, when you transpose that to Greenwich Mean Time or United Kingdom time, That's 2:30 in the afternoon in the United Kingdom, in the main part of the United Kingdom, in England. Greenwich Mean Time, UK time, Zulu time, as the military calls it. That'll be 2:30 in the afternoon. So whether it be the Sabbath service in the morning in the United States or the Sabbath service in the afternoon in the United Kingdom, during that service here on cogtv.org or sabbath.tv, I will plan to go over with you what these 3 weeks that began with the fast of Tammuz, the fast of the fourth month, 2 days ago on the 17th of the fourth month. We'll plan to cover something about that mañana in the morning. Now, tonight, let's see. In my rush to get things ready, I didn't queue up the telecast we have tonight by Mr. Armstrong from 1981, where Mr. Armstrong will be speaking on an important subject for us tonight. I'll tell you what it is in just a moment. Let me find it and punch it up. Here it is, right here. And the subject's going to be, what are the laws of success? Now, even for all of us today, in this time when God has his church scattered. By the way, before we put Mr. Armstrong up on the screen, with thanks to Mr. Joe, I'll put a picture of the month of July from the pocket calendar on the screen. And again, the thanks to Mr. Joe for adding some highlighting to this calendar. And he's got the weekly Sabbath highlighted in purple, a light shade of purple, and the current Sabbath highlighted with a bright yellow. So this current Sabbath, he's got the yellow a little ways at the end of Friday, July 7th. And at midnight, when the calendar changes over to July 8th, well, will still be the Sabbath. Even though man changes the day from Friday to Saturday, it will still be the Sabbath day. Now, I notice it may break up my audio a little bit because we are getting a signal on our live streaming software that our live streaming signal is not putting out the full bandwidth. And that may be because, as I've been studying it on our internet circuit, there may be a lot of people in the neighborhood using their internet tonight, and that preventing us from having full bandwidth. All right, we've got to do something about that, and that means I got to either buy more bandwidth, or is there a way? Let me check something. I'm learning more about how to use this crazy internet stuff. If we go to settings, let's see if I can bring up settings. There it is right there. Let me check and see if we are hooked on the Wi-Fi or hooked direct to the network cable. That can make a big difference for us. Let's see. All right, we've got the Wi-Fi on. I hate to test this live because we may lose our signal entirely. If that happens, brethren, because we're getting such a strong, not strong signal, I'm getting a yellow light instead of a green light for our live stream, and that may mean the audio is breaking up badly. As I noticed, that happened a little bit last week. I do see, though, as I look at it on our website, it seems to be coming through. Now, I haven't checked the audio. Let me check Facebook. Let's see if we see it clearly on Facebook. Now, on Facebook, from my account, since I run this on Sabbath Service, Facebook Live Sabbath Service page, I have to go from my personal page over to the Sabbath Service page, and then switch, and then scroll down and press another switch button and make sure our signal is there. Greetings, Domino. Thank you. Well, thank you to you also. I had some communication with Domino from New York this week. By the way, some of you that I've missed communicating with, I've just been snowed this week, and I'm sorry I haven't been able to get back to everyone. All right, I see we're having a problem not finding it on Facebook, and I'm seeing that bright yellow indication that our stream is not going out full barrel. What I'll do if we lose the signal and I have to sign back on with a second stream, we'll pick up with Mr. Armstrong in that second stream. That way we'll have the main thing for tonight, hopefully on a more powerful signal. Let me see where network and internet, Ethernet. Okay, let's see if we got our Ethernet connected. Private, your network is discoverable on the network. Recommended public, your device is not discoverable. I hate to change it in the middle of a live stream, but let me see. I can't tell what's going on. Let's see. Oh, it's connected via. All right, internet and Ethernet is trying to tell me that it's primarily using the Wi-Fi, and the Wi-Fi is not getting a good connection. Let's see. Oh, it even says Ethernet is not connected. That's why. All right, we're live, and I'll appreciate, brethren, your prayers for those of you who support this ministry with prayers. Our Ethernet connector is plugged in, but for some reason it's saying we are not connected. Now, that could be because we had to change our modem and router the other day. That's probably why, even though I have the wire plugged in here. Well, to make sure that Mr. Armstrong goes out well, I'm very, very tempted to try changing this midstream and to explain ahead of time, brethren, that if we lose the signal entirely, that we'll just start it back up in a couple of minutes from now and hopefully be on the wired stream so that it comes through, because some of you may not. Facebook looks like it's not coming through at all. Unless I'm just not pressing the right buttons. And it looks like we're having a problem. Now, if we are coming through on YouTube, okay, I will apologize to those of you who I'll be cutting off in a moment when we go make sure we switch to the wired in connection so I can get that live stream bandwidth back up into the green light instead of the yellow light. It just plain flat looks like we're not there on Facebook. All right, I'm going to try this live, which means it may be an awkward shutdown. I really hate to do that, but all right, but I'm going to have to do that. So we'll be back in 5 minutes, brethren, and I'll do a very short introduction and go to Mr. Armstrong for those of you that are on YouTube. So if you just come back for part 2 in about 5 minutes, we should be back and hopefully have a stronger signal.